It's time once again for Talking Bible with the Brandons, the only podcast that proves a Tennessee fan and an Alabama fan can get along. Here's your host, Pastors Brandon Pugh and Brandon Carter.
Good morning, Bethel. And here we are, Tuesday, and just kind of hanging out here in the book of Jeremiah. Maybe going back to an old friend there in 2 Kings today as well. Just kind of in the mood, to go back in time. And you ever wish you could go back in time? Just off topic there.
Oh, sure.
Like, see kind of how they did it.
Oh, yeah.
Like back in those, like maybe you could go back in time. I've often thought about this. Like, if I went back in time, what would be the invention that I would introduce to the rest of the world that would just, it would either probably get me killed for like witchcraft, or it would like make me a hero and I would have a day named after me.
I was thinking more like I would go back in time and buy all the stock in Apple I could.
Oh.
Or at Microsoft.
Oh, and
Just
like
so I could get rich.
kind of
Real
like
pure
provided
motive.
an alternate future, like in Back to the Future
Like bet
too.
all I had on, say,
Like
a major upset no one seen coming.
Yeah.
And you had really good odds in your against you, but the payoff would be huge.
Yeah.
You know.
So you would basically just live out the movie Back to the Future 2, and you would be Biff.
Yeah, just be greedy. You know.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
would you go back and tell, help people win wars
Right.
that were, you go to and tell the British, the colonials, that the British are coming.
Oh,
a little
yeah,
more
be-
ahead of
be
time.
the new Paul Revere.
You could do stuff like that. Hey, there you go. Pearl Harbor is about to happen.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then would anybody believe you?
that's true. Yeah. Because if we're talking about Pearl Harbor, they had a lot of things, that they just kind of dismissed there.
That's true. There were signals.
I often think, like, if I was like a soldier, back in, maybe 1,000 years ago, that'd be kind of a raw deal, just because, it's like me as a soldier, I was in Iraq a couple of tours, and it's like we had guns, rifles, and I just thought, man, like, this is much better than running out on a front, line there, a charge.
Kind of a brave heart.
On a big plane with a battle axe in my hand.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so glad I'm in a period of time where I don't have to fight in a war like that.
I think it'd be bad either way.
Probably so.
Yeah.
Probably so. Well, the
If they don't
reason
get napalmed
that's true.
in
That's true. Although
Yeah.
I think napalm has been banned now
has,
by
yes.
Geneva Conventions.
Sure.
But sometimes bad guys don't play
no
by the
chemical
rules
warfare
too.
back there in those days.
That is true. Yeah. Well, the reason why we're going back in time here is because we see quite a bit of pillaging, quite a bit of destruction in the days of antiquity here. So this is really kind of the reliving, the retelling of the fall of Jerusalem
Yeah.
here. We see the temple being raised here. Not the best time in the world for the nation of Israel there. Wouldn't you say, Brandon?
Now, this is basically in these chapters you're seeing the final exile of Jerusalem, Judah, the southern kingdom. Israel, the northern kingdom, had already been exiled by the Assyrians, and essentially they disappear. The northern kingdoms were so wicked, and all of their kings so wicked, they just kind of disappear, actually. They're dispersed and then mixed in with all the nations, which is where the Samaritans come from.
Why just
So despised.
Yeah, they
because
didn't like
were part of the northern people. They
were
got
kind of
mixed
traitors
in.
is what
That's
they viewed
right.
them
And
as.
so their bloodline is lost. The people of the southern kingdom of Judah and Jerusalem are exiled into Babylon for 70 years, and there, obviously they do mix some, but there's a remnant of them that are able to preserve their identity as God's
They
people.
will not bow the knee.
That's right. And so we're going to be looking at some of that as we go over Daniel and some things this week. But so 2 Kings 24 and 25, that's the story here.
Right, the
Nebuchadnezzar
historical
comes
narrative.
in, final conquest, really, of Israel at that time, of Judah.
Yeah. So we got some kings here, in 2 Kings 24 and 25, and then referenced also in Jeremiah 52, and these aren't good kings. Once again, kind of par for the course here with Judah, for me, I kind of honed in, just if we're talking about like our HEAR acronym this week here, I kind of honed in on right there that chapter in Jeremiah 52. So just to provide you a little,
very end of
the very end of it. So just to provide you a little context here, Jehoiakim was a king of Judah. And he's there, and he's reigning, and he's not a good king. It says that he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and kind of followed after the ways of his father. And Jehoiakim, there's a lot that's left out of kind of the story here and everything that happened there. But ultimately, he surrenders. He surrenders
That's right.
to Babylon, and he gets imprisoned.
Taken over to Babylon.
Yeah.
Exiled.
But I mean, he gets thrown into prison there, but it's like we read about other kings that kind of came after, and it's like they got a far worse deal because they didn't surrender. They rebelled.
Yeah, Zedekiah, they set up a puppet king, Zedekiah, in his place, and he reigns 11 years, and then he rebels against the king of Babylon, and that turns out to be a bad thing, especially when God had told him, this is what is going to happen to you. It's too late. I'm not with you. I'm not going to fight for you. I'm not going to defeat Nebuchadnezzar for you.
Right.
You need to give it up.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it.
Yeah.
So Zedekiah doesn't. And
Zedekiah says, basically, he has to watch his children be slaughtered in front of him, and then he gets his eyes gouged out.
right. So as though that's the last thing you're going to see is the slaughter of your children.
Yeah.
And then they would gouge your eyes out.
Yeah. Just a miserable fate to succumb to there.
Yes.
But here we see Jehoiakim, and for whatever reason, he surrenders here. So certainly more of a wise decision in hindsight, because we can see right here, it says in verse 31, in the 37th year of the exile of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, and the 25th day of the month, Evil Merodach, the king of Babylon, what a name there.
Yeah, part of the all-name team in the Bible.
That's
Evil Merodach.
Yeah, man. So this guy says, in the year that he began to reign graciously, so that would make us think that there were many years that he didn't reign graciously, he freed Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and brought him out of the prison, and he spoke kindly to him, and he gave him a seat above the seats of the kings who were there with him in Babylon. So Jehoiakim put off his prison garments, and every day of his life he dined regularly at the king's table. And for his allowance, a regular allowance was given to him by the king according to his daily needs until the day of his death, as long as he lived. That's not a bad deal.
Well, it turned out well. Now, it's 37 years.
It's a long time.
He was in exile.
Yeah.
And we don't know anything.
How long he was in prison for that period of time.
And we don't know how he was treated. And we don't know why. There's no explanation.
Yeah.
Was this an act of God's moving because of his repentance? Or was it just, hey, the right guy, and he just connected with evil Merodach?
Yeah.
know,
Just
like,
kindred spirits of sorts
I
here. They
don't
both did
know.
what was evil inside the Lord, and he was just going to be gracious to him. Yeah. Who knows? We don't know. And that's kind of why it's tough to kind of glean any kind of principles here from these readings here. A lot of times whenever you go to the Bible, it's all certainly inspired by the Lord, but you just read it, and it's just, this is what happened. So
hard to know sometimes how to apply some of these stories and what happened to your own life.
Yeah.
So,
but,
how did you apply it?
Well, just for me, kind of, I guess, personally, generically, I said, what Christ does for us is, release us from the imprisonment of our sin. Certainly, I've done what is evil in the sight of the Lord. I'm not, innocent in that regard by any means. But so God frees us from the imprisonment of our sin. He shows us grace and kindness. That's what it says that the king of Babylon did for him here. Christ robes us in our righteousness,
Takes
so
off the old
takes
clothes.
off the prison garments, right? And He provides for us all the days of our life, and that even extends on into eternity.
Yeah, it gives you a place at the table, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, I mean, just for me, personally, I mean, that's kind of what I reflected on as I'm reading through that. And a lot of times you see phrases, and I think that's kind of the Bible is written in that way by design, that God just kind of,
Right.
It may not be what the text is saying in the historical context in the moment, but
It's kind of a fuller application when you know the whole story of redemption.
that's right. I think that the Bible speaks to people whenever God's Spirit is within them to think about the graciousness of God as they read through
Well,
it.
yeah, and I think too, one of the things this is showing. So, the Bible begins where? In a garden.
Yes.
Man sins, and he's cast out east, and he goes
East
into
Eden.
exile.
That's right.
All right, he's really away from home. God gives him a new home in promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey. He sins, and God exiles him east again. And I think if you look at the book of Jeremiah, it starts out very bleak, and it's bleak all the way through. But maybe the idea here is just God is saying we're going to end this story with a note of hope here.
Yeah.
A little bit of restoration, a note of trying to signal that this is not going to be the last word for my people. We're not always going to be in exile.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, right, so what does the Bible say about Christians now? We are strangers. Sojourners. We are in a kind of exile. This world is not our home, but there's hints all through the scriptures that it's not going to end that way. We're not going to live the rest of our lives in exile east of the promised land or east of Eden. Yet instead, we're going to be brought into a new heavens and a new earth. And boy, that's going to be nice. Talk about a new set of clothes and a new table to eat at and a daily allowance to live by. That's going to be wonderful. So
Absolutely. Amen to that, brother. Well, I know this must sadden you, and I do intentionally use the word sadden here as we leave the Weeping Prophets book behind here.
Yes.
Your kindred spirit here, a weeping prophet of sorts yourself, really, in many ways here. And we'll be moving on to a new prophet here, and we're gonna make a little pit stop here.
in Ezekiel.
That's right.
Only one day.
Yep. But it's going to be short and sweet. And, looking forward to getting into it with you guys. So this reading plan is kind of all over
It's
the place.
Ezekiel 1 through 3, first 3 verses of the book. And
Okay.
then you skip to 36, 16 through 38, and then chapter 37. And the reason why is, once again, he's just showing you Ezekiel's call, and then you're going to read about the new covenant again, prophesied through the mouth of Ezekiel. So just a little bit different angle.
Yeah, a little bit different flavor on it there. So if you didn't get enough of the new covenant yesterday, make sure you're tuning in. How can you ever get enough of the new covenant?
You can't.
Yeah. Make sure you're
Kinda
tuning
like
in.
My preaching.
Right.
Yeah. Or Alabama football.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, let's stick with the new covenant here, folks. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. We look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Bible with the Brandons. Be sure to like our page on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search for Bethel Baptist RC. You can also get updates at our website at www.bethelnow.net. Thanks again for listening.